Well, welcome back, everyone, to episode 4, our dual language immersion conversation. So, our first 3 episodes, we had school district leaders, school leaders that came on and talked about why they had a dual language immersion program, the benefits to it, and what it takes to put it together. But today, we actually have a graduate of one of the programs we featured earlier. So, earlier in our series, we talked to Dr. Sean Smith, who is the superintendent of Lawrence Township here in Indianapolis, Indiana. And Chunia Graves is one of those students. So she went through the dual language immersion program in Lawrence Township, and she's an adult. She has a career. And so we thought it would be important to not only talk to the school leaders, but also talk to someone who actually went through the program and learn about the impact on their life. So, Chunia, thanks for being part of this series today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So, can you tell us a little bit about when you found out that you were going to be attending a dual language immersion program? What was that conversation like with your parents? And what did they tell you about their why for having you participate in this type of programming?
Well, you know what? I didn't realize anything different. I mean, I was put in this position in kindergarten. And so this was my idea of school for quite some time. I thought everyone was learning dual languages, but I lived actually out of district. So I went to Forest Glen for elementary school, but all the kids in my neighborhood, they went to Amy Beverland. And so I never got to really join in on those conversations from their lunch table or anything like that, because I'm talking to them about, whatever was going on at Forest Glen. And so if I could describe though, my parents in one word, what that was really like for them, I would really use the word sacrifice. My parents ended up moving to Lawrence Township because it was actually cheaper than the tuition they were paying for my older sister at the time to attend the Indiana school over there, like on the west side. Okay,
Oh, the
I forget.
international school.
Thank you. The international school. Yes. So she was attending that school, and she was about 6 years older than me, and so we actually decided to move to Lawrence Township, and it was a little bit cheaper than kind of continuing to pay tuition and then eventually paying tuition for both of us. So this was more of a free program at the time. We would end up paying like additionals for books or something like that, but ultimately my parents were, I would say, also radicals. I mean, their foresight, it was just greater than the present moment. And so for them to just really be able to say like, hey, I think this is really going to work out for them, for both of our children to be in this program. I mean, that was tremendous because at the time, that wasn't the landscape in Indiana. We didn't have such diversity. And so to see it truly be such an influx now is just like, wow, man, you guys were really onto something. And then now to see all these other programs as well, just so inept in creating these platforms is just tremendous.
Well, that's great. So, what was it like? What was a typical day like for you? Because, as you said, you didn't know anything else. So, you started this in
Right.
kindergarten, and to you, this was the way school was. But take
Right.
us through a typical day of DLI.
Absolutely. So it was Spanish all day. I mean, from kindergarten until about fourth grade, we were Spanish all day. And when I mean Spanish all day, I mean we would lose recess if we spoke in English. Okay, so this was a serious thing. Like, it was a very serious punishment. Like, gosh, I lost recess because I said something, even just a gossip little whisper to a friend. It had to be in Spanish. And so, but that culture was established early on, and that's what created such great learners. And so I believe that things have changed a little bit since. So this was Spanish all day. And so I think now it's like half day Spanish, half day English, because I didn't really start learning Spanish, or I'm sorry, I didn't really start learning English until my fifth grade year. And so that was when we would have half day English and half day Spanish. And so we would kind of, they were split into two classes. And so you were either learning English, and then you'd switch over to learn Spanish. So I think that they've switched the program since, but I mean, K through 4, it was all Spanish to the point of losing recess. Even at the lunch tables, I mean, it was serious, it was strict, but it was fun, and it really kept you learning.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And if you missed Dr. Smith episode, go back and watch that, because in his episode he talks a little bit about them trying to figure out that right formula about how much Spanish versus how much English. And some of our other guests have talked about it as well, because trying to figure out how much of the day that you want in each language is a thing that is tricky. And they're trying to figure out what that right spot is. One thing that may stand out to some of our viewers is that back in the time that you were in this, in particular, there may not have been a lot of Black parents deciding this for their children. So, did you feel like you stood out in the program? Were there a lot of Black children with you in this program? Tell us a little bit about that component of your experience.
Yes, absolutely. So I would say, and it's so interesting because again, this is kindergarten until, I mean, high school. So I've known these same people my entire life, since I was 5 years old. And there were, I want to say there were five of us total. Um, and that lack of representation for me just was so interesting because that was my like perception of everything moving forward. And just that I truly believed, as a young adult or, young youth that, you know, there weren't people of color speaking other languages. I just truly thought that. So again, and again, right? A child can only speak to what they know at the time. But again, it's been an influx of learning, an influx of culture to utilize the program later and live in Florida, to attend my undergraduate studies, and then again in California to attend my master's program. I mean, and then back again in Indiana, again, and seeing the diversity and the influx, I mean, has been just monumental for me. And so that's one of the things that I enjoy, is really being able to be around such a different perspective of a group of people, and to see where we've gone with the education that we've had.
And what type of support do you get for home? Because if there's a parent listening, they might be a little bit nervous about putting their kid into a program and they may not speak that language. So, what did it look like from the home front with you being in a school where you were, for those first few years speaking only Spanish?
Absolutely. So that was one of the difficulties, I would say. Seeking guidance for homework and support, to the point where my mom was, having to go to like after school classes. So I'm in like maybe brownies at the time, and she's doing some type of parent learning where they're slightly learning Spanish, but really they're just learning how to help us with our homework because it was just, something that was fairly new and difficult. I would still say without hesitation to pursue it. I mean, we got through it. We got through it together. We were learning together a lot of these things, and I truly believe that not only was I to benefit, but I truly believe my parents did as well. That was a difficulty with homework being in Spanish, but I would move past it to say that the reward is so much greater.
And I think you talked a little bit about the impact of the program because you mentioned, living in different states. So now, you're on the other side of that. Tell us about the impact of being a person who is bilingual, who can navigate the world in Spanish and also navigate the world in English. What has that looked like for you post Lawrence Township dual language immersion education?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I have to be totally very clear about the community that it has blessed me with. To be amongst people that I've literally known for a lifetime. I just was at some restaurant in McCordsville and ran into one of my old cohort's little sister, and so it's just like those things there just weird. It's a tight knit community, but it's not. It's so expansive, and so people will know like, oh, I saw your cousin, recently, and things like that. The community is just so great, and I think that brings out the best of Lawrence. I'm a little biased, but go Wildcats. I will also say that being a dual language learner, it has really benefited me just outside of Indiana. If you would have told fifth grade me like, hey, this is going to be super beneficial for you, I wouldn't have believed you. But I didn't have the perspective to see outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. And so in high school, I am considering going to school to play volleyball. And I really wanted to go somewhere warm because I didn't want to walk in the cold. And so I was looking into Florida, and sure enough, I got a full ride to Jacksonville University to play volleyball. And I was so super excited, but the culture shock to live in Florida was so much less severe because I had, teammates from Canada that were speaking French and I could understand her. And so we were just chatting back and forth, like I'm speaking in Spanish, she's speaking in French. And, it was just a one Latin language after the other, just a beautiful, hoopla. And I had a coach that was Portuguese, and she spoke Portuguese. And so that was just amazing as well, living in Florida. And, then I moved to California to pursue my master's degree. And living in California was even more of a surplus. I think my first job out of undergrad, I'm sorry, just to rewind, my first job out of undergrad was to work at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And so I'm like selling my cars in Spanish and, things like that, just beautiful customer service orientation there. So I was able to really meet the customer where they were at and speak in their language. And to this day, I still utilize that information and apply it to my current practice as a mental health clinician. And so to be able to speak to people and to offer that service in such a difficult topic in a hard space for people, but to offer that in their language is not only crucial, but it has been absolutely beneficial. I mean, I even picked it up as a major. So one of my majors, I ended up being a double major one of my majors is like a Bachelor of Science in Spanish or Bachelor of Arts in Spanish or something like that. I studied abroad while I was in my graduate studies. And so it was only offered to people who could speak Spanish and that particular study abroad program. And so I was able to travel to Peru, and just live there for a month or, throughout the semester. I mean, it was beautiful and be able to communicate and be amongst the community. It was just outstanding, to say the least. I've had an amazingly rewarding experience from this thing that started in kindergarten when my parents just thought it would be a good idea.
And so for people listening right now who may be on the fence, what do you have to say to them about, hey, like maybe this is the thing for your child, or if there's students in a dual language immersion program that come across this conversation, what words of wisdom do you have for them who may not see the value of it, or it's hard and they are trying to get out of the programming?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the exposure is worth it. The exposure has been monumental. We used to have this fair, and we would, dress up and sing and dance, and we would bring food that was like native to the Latinx culture. And I get it, because I would have loved to have that particular fair really expand upon other cultures, and so yes, that exposure piece is worth it, but it's maybe limited. But the knowledge, right, that you grow from and the community that you receive is so necessary. And it's just been such an impact for me, and it hasn't stopped yet. I mean, I'm still using it. I'm still using language today in my daily practice as a clinician. And so, again, it started off as like something that I couldn't see. I couldn't see the end. I didn't know that I would be in mental health right now, but I would challenge you to stick it out. Absolutely.
And with your current job as a clinician, would you say it has expanded your access to be able to serve other population, and then with people with multiple identities like Afro, Latino? Do you want to speak a little bit about that as well?
Absolutely. I have been able to increase my reach, to people in need. That is not only rewarding, but I work with youth, I work with children. But children, are so impacted. So I end up working with their families. I end up connecting them to other resources. I end up, doing all these different things. And and to expand my reach and to say, like, hey, I'm able to communicate with you as well. I want to meet you where you are and communicate in your language. That is just so comforting, to some people that are maybe going through a difficult experience and unable to really articulate the emotion that they're experiencing anyway, let alone in a different language. So just let me speak to you in a manner that you're comfortable. That's just so beneficial, you know. So absolutely. And it, again, in the mental health space, but also, like I said, I was renting out cars at Enterprise when I first started, and still I'm getting people what they needed at the time. If maybe they were, in a difficult situation, their insurance company, they don't really understand. I mean, who understands insurance? Let's be honest. So it's like, but maybe their insurance company, they don't know what happened, but they're here for a car and they're kind of trying to figure things out. And so I'm helping anyone in need, and I think that that's so important, just to be able to communicate and kind of let down that barrier. I think that the world needs more of that.
Well, on that note, we will wrap things up today. But thanks so much for joining us. I know Lawrence Township will be proud of to see this update from one of their former students. And as many of the viewers know, I am also a Lawrence Township grad. I did not have the pleasure of going to the DLI program, so I'm probably a little bit biased to Lawrence Township as well. But to our viewers, thanks for continuing to tune in to our dual language immersion program. This is continuing to increase across districts, across our state. And so as it continues to increase, we want to continue to shed light on that, so that parents and caregivers know that this is an option. And we love it when it's happening at our public schools because, as Chunia pointed out, paying tuition for your child to be bilingual is a sacrifice. But when it's offered by the public school, there is accessible to more children, and that's what we want. So tune back in as we continue talking and delving into this topic. Until next time.